Hello, everyone. So, thank you for joining us today. So, it's myself, we got Dr. Andrea Clark. We're going to be talking about executive presence and how we can actually help you to move forward in your career, no matter where you're at, whether you're early careers, mid careers, seniors level executive. We could always get better in some of the business acumen that we have. So, Miss Andrea Clark, I'd like you to introduce yourself and then tell me a little bit more about the program that we're going to present today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brandon. As always, it's a pleasure to be here on this lovely Friday afternoon. Yeah, we're definitely going to dive into executive presence and how what it means to really command the room. With your presence alone. As you already stated to our audience, I'm Dr. Andrea Clark. My background is scientific research, executive leadership. I specialize a lot in skill development with healthcare, STEM, public health professionals with our Lead with Impact event that we have coming up at Miami-Dade College at the medical campus. Something that we will be helping our emerging professionals or leaders, rather, executives, is to master the executive presence. So today we're going to do something a little bit different, Grant. I know that you are the brand strategist. You know how to masterly curate your brand to other people. So even before they meet you, they've already created a narrative about who you are, right? So before you step in the room, you've already laid the groundwork of who you are to individuals. And something as we train emerging professionals and leaders in this field, mastering an executive presence is very, very important. Not necessarily just your skill, what you say, and how you say it, but how you show up matters. So, Grant, I want to ask you a question. What is executive presence?
In my humble, I would say, definition, and I had to think about this a little bit. What is executive presence? And for me, executive presence isn't, I should say, about power, but it is about trust, confidence, competence, and communication. But here's the good news: you can build it at any level of your career. And I want you to ask yourself, when was the last time you spoke up in a high stakes moment? And what happened? Did people lean in or did they tune out? Now, I've interviewed hundreds of executives and I've noticed something fascinating. And you're right. I've been doing the Follow the Brand now about 3 years. I've interviewed hundreds of leading executives, entrepreneurs, business people at all different levels. But the most powerful leaders don't just have titles, they have something else. And I'll explain. Like, for instance, Dr. Kimberly Long, who is the CEO of California Nurse Leaders, she shared something that changed my entire perspective when it came to executive presence. Now, what she shared with me was the moment you try to prove your power is the moment you lose it. And I'll give you an example of what she was talking about. Like, so during a hospital merger, it was a boardroom meeting, and she lowered her voice instead of raising it when it got a little contentious in the room. And then the room leaned in to listen more. So, as a leader, your present isn't just about today's meeting or this quarter's results. It's about how you shape the culture and the future of your organization. So, when discussions get heated, intentionally slow down and speak quietly. And that's how your presence will begin to spread. So, what you can do, I'll give you some tips around this. In the next 3 meetings that you get into, try speaking slower, like 10% slower, and then 20% quieter, and see what happens during the conversation.
That's fantastic. I never thought about how you can command your space by doing the inverse of what we think, right? We think you have to assert yourself and get your point across more assertively, but actually, you're saying do the opposite. Have that level of self awareness, right? And also change the cadence, watch your tone, and you will be surprised how other people follow your lead. That's a great
Absolutely.
tip. And I love that you brought up the example of the merger because actually at the Lead with Impact, Secrets to the C-Suite, one of our case studies will be a simulation of a hospital merger. So this could be a great way that where we put you in those high stakes situations and you can practice this, right? You can practice your tone, your cadence of your voice, your temperament, and how you show up. So
Yeah.
that's really good information and good tips to follow. So I'm curious. So let's look at the other side of that. What destroys an executive presence?
That is a good question. And it happens a lot. And I'll give you just a quick example what happens in the brand perspective of what when you destroy your presence. Like a brand, they will have, you have a certain belief about a particular product or a particular service. And then you have a bad experience. You see it all the time online, a bad experience. And then someone begins to then talking about the experience. You know what? I went to Target and I went into Target and they overcharged me for this and that. And you put all that out. Then you begin destroying the brand image that you have. So your presence begins to, instead of expanding, it begins to shrink. So I call this the mistakes that most people make without even realizing it. And there are three common mistakes when it comes to destroying executive presence. And a lot of times it's your reaction in tough moments. When things get really heated, and then what are you doing in the moment? Are you reacting? What's your emotional intelligence at that point, right? So when challenged in a meeting, this is something I do a lot. I take exactly what I got here. I'll take some water, take a slow sip, and I will relax. And it helps everyone in the room to relax. Those 3 seconds will help you to respond instead of reacting. Another tip that I've used is over explaining, or I would say a common problem that happens is you're over explaining a particular issue or problem that's occurring. Instead of defending every single one of these details, let's start with restate the headline first. Put the fact on the table first and say something like, here's the headline. I can dive deeper if you would like. So now you're asking permission. This kind of de-escalates the situation, right? And then you can be more exact and have clarity in your explanation without over explaining. And then the third common mistake, and I hear this so much now, I don't know why it's gotten so much traction, but it does. It's imposter syndrome. People lose confidence. They don't believe in themselves. And even Dr. Long, who I talked about a little earlier, she still gets nervous before board meetings. And she's the CEO, been a CEO for a long time, in the C-suite for a very long time, but she still gets nervous. But what she does is that she prepares. She prepares more thoroughly instead of doubting herself. And that nervousness that you feel like deep in your gut, that's not your enemy. That's the energy that you're looking to get out, right? And you call that energy or that nervousness and it becomes a passion instead of something that you're outside of your comfort zone. So executive presence isn't just a destination, it is a practice. And you have to start where you are. Use what you have and build from there.
And that's a really good advice. I remember early on in my professional career as a healthcare professional, I worked with a specialist who was a surgeon, and we had a patient. She checked in. We did all the back end work with her. I think we had to draw some blood, things of that nature. And as this patient was leaving, she fell out, hit her head on the checkout counter there, and we all freaked out.
Mhm.
But I noticed the doctor came and he was immensely calm. And just because I was looking for kind of like somewhere to anchor my emotion, I was like, okay, well, he's not freaking out. So I instantaneously became calm in the situation and just followed his lead. And, and now listening to you, that's him having that level of self awareness. He made sure that he communicated slower and effectively so So it allowed us to balance out our emotions and lean towards him and see him as the leader that he is, you know. So I love that you say when the stakes are high and you have those tense situations, have that level of emotional intelligence of you can only control so much, but you can control what you think, what you do, what you say, and how you feel. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. So when we talk about the communication aspect of this, right? So how does communication impact executive presence? I'd say on a scale of 1 to 10.
Man, when it comes to communication, I'm going to give that a 10, actually.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to be able to communicate effectively. I mean, when it comes to executive presence, most people, when we look at it from a definition, they're looking at communication style. Communication is not always your voice, it's how you show up in the room or how you show up before you're in the room, as you described earlier around the personal brand. How do you show up digitally? What are you saying about yourself when you're not there? Other people are saying about yourself. This is all a part of the communication that's constantly happening within your department, within the company, within the public opinion. The court of public opinion is very, very big. So when I think of communication, I'm thinking more around the world of gravitas. What is your gravitas and your deep expertise in your zone of genius? Are you demonstrating a strong understanding of your field and the ability to make informed decisions? And what we just talked about earlier really falls into this next level, which is emotional intelligence. Are you staying composed under pressure? Are you managing your emotions and responding thoughtfully rather than reacting impulsively? This is all part of the communication. What are you communicating to the situation? And then it comes to decisiveness. Are you making clear, confident decisions and standing by them, even in uncertain situations? And I'll give you an example. One of the interviews I did on Follow the Brand was on Denzel Ross. Now, Denzel Ross is the president of Indiana University Health South Central. But 6 years ago, he was an IT specialist and he was feeling a little stuck in middle management, like we find a lot of people are. But he did something differently, right? He did three things that I want to point out. And I encourage people to take notes and they can even respond live to this session. That is, he identified pain points nobody was addressing, not just the technical issues, but communication gaps between departments. Secondly, he documented everything, not just the wins, but also the lessons from failures. And then he mastered the 2 minute summary. Because when you're talking to a VP or peer, leaders do not have time for long explanations. So that was a game changer for him. So after every project, Denzel sent recognition emails highlighting his team's contributions. He became known as someone who lifted others up. And that's how you build allies, even before you have authority. And that all comes from your communication style.
Fantastic. And to, like you said, to go to your point, and that's what we're looking at. If you're feeling stuck or just interested in going to that next level, this is where we tap into experts like you. And I'm so happy that you came on the panel with us for the Lead with Impact because you've mastered, you know, that executive presence. Whether you've been running five-star BDM for 3, 4, 5 years, you have been an executive for over 3 decades, you know. So we have the best on the field to give us these fantastic tips. And not only will you be giving us tips during the Lead with Impact summit, we will actually be able to apply these tips in a real life simulation boardroom so you can put these skills to the test, right? And then we can give you feedback in real time on how you commanded the room, how you communicated across the board when the stakes are high. So I'm really happy that you're sharing this insight and knowledge. But Grant, I have something else I want to ask you. How do you balance authority and approachability. A lot of times when you see a CEO or we see them on LinkedIn or we see a CSO or a chief anything, right? We kind of go in within ourselves and we think maybe that they are too busy. They don't have time to talk to us and share their wisdom and knowledge. So how would an executive with an executive presence balance the two in a more approachable way, but still having the authority and the responsibility of their role?
That is a great question. Balancing authority and approachability. Now, this is one of the biggest challenges for leaders, especially if you would you classify yourself as an introvert, right? But there are certain frameworks that I have found that work from an executive presence level. And that is especially if you are an introvert. You need to set boundaries with warmth. And what do I mean by that? Instead of saying something like, I don't have time for this, and remember, you're communicating this to someone else. You would say something like, I love to help. Let's schedule time tomorrow at 2 p.m. And that allows you now to get prepared for whatever it is that you need to help this individual with, instead of just speaking immediately in the moment when you're not really ready and you don't know exactly what it is that you're trying to convey. That is something I've used, and it's very, very good to set time that allows me to then get prepared. The other person also can get more prepared on their side of the ball, so you can have a meaningful discussion and a good use of time, because time is the most valuable asset that you have as an executive. Now, you also want to show vulnerability. This is something I learned. Show vulnerability with purpose. What do I mean by that? Instead of saying, I have all the answers, say something along the lines of this. I have struggled with this as well, and here's what worked for me. See, the goal is not to be everyone's friend, it is to be everyone's ally. And that is part of the communication style. And it begins to build authority, but you're approachable because you are showing your vulnerability at the same time.
That's fantastic. And Joey, thank you so much for your engagement. Managing up is a key way to build your team's confidence in you as a leader, even if you have not yet attained the leadership role. That is fantastic, fantastic. Thank you so much for that comment. Yeah, you have to kind of be it before you can step into those
Sure.
roles. And practice, like anything, makes perfect, right? So building confidence, and even if you don't have a team that directly reports to you directly, look at your peers. How are you building your peers up? What influence do you have in your immediate department? Everything starts where you are, right? Before you get the title, as you always told us, before you get the team, how are you impacting and influencing your everyday coworkers and colleagues and peers? That's you exercising that executive presence. That's fantastic. I really love this. You're giving us so many jewels of wisdom here. So, Grant, how do you gain influence as a leader? Okay, I've mastered my communication skill. I made sure that I'm vulnerable enough so I am approachable. I made sure that I have that authoritative there. I've been to workshops. I've been to the Lead with Impact workshops, worked on my leadership skills, worked on my emotional intelligence. But how can I really be influential so when I go in for that next executive role or the next role, how can people be so inspired by my presence alone?
This is an important discussion. I'm glad you asked the question. And I want everyone to lean in. It's
Okay.
like I was saying earlier, lean into what she just asked. Is how do you gain influence as a leader? And I would say influence isn't about position, title, right? It's about adding value before anyone acts. So, like what Joy just said in the chat, she put out there, it's about adding value before anyone acts. One of the best strategies I use is called the preview principle, right? So we say the preview principle. What is that? the preview principle can be broken down for 3 different levels, I would say, depending on who you are and what you do, right? So if you're an individual contributor, I would say to get influence, share your project updates early. Before anyone asks you, share your project updates early. That's going to help with influence. And then ask for input before decisions are final. Remember, you're an individual contributor. If you ask for input before the decision is final, then you have influence on the final decision, right? And if you're a manager, you want to preview big ideas. If you've got a big idea, something that's going to change the flow, the workflow, or something to that effect, you want to share that with key stakeholders. You want to build those relationships. You want to build cross-department relationships. And why does that work? Because people support what they create. I'll say that again. People support what they help create, right? So when you're involving the key stakeholders and you're bringing a great idea to the table, and now you want some influence, they're going to like, hey, not only did Andrea help Grant, they helped each other to deliver the Lead with Impact workshop that's going to happen in March. So everyone joins in, everyone gets some shine on that particular project. Doesn't matter that the idea initially came from you. It's the idea that it's shared throughout the department, whatever you're managing, or the team, and that type of thing. And they see you as a team player. Your name begins to come up when you're not in the room. I'll say that again. Your name begins to come up when you're not in the room. Like, wow, this person is great. And I'm sure, Andrea, you've been probably in a lot of discussions because you've had a lot of career promotions, and those things happen when you're not there.
Yeah. Even when you're not in the state or the country, your name can come up in rooms, right?
Exactly.
So when I hear you talk about influence, I also hear inclusivity in that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're not only, and we love what you said, Dr. Quickscales, you truly believe that people must see and feel your passion. I love that. People are strongly connected to emotions, right? And that's closer connected to what we remember. We know the late great Maya Angelou said, people will forget what you did, they'll forget what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel, right? And that feeling allows people to be more inspired and passionate. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. You know, we have
Absolutely.
Pamela here. Everyone supports what they help create. That's very impactful. I took that away too, Pamela. So thank you for highlighting with us. So, Grant, like I said, you have over 3 decades in the game of
3
executive
decades? I
presence.
was only a baby.
Oh, yeah. So therefore, you have masterfully curated yourself as an executive, and then even pivoted yourself. When life threw you lemons, you literally made lemonade, and you repivoted yourself and rebranded yourself. That takes a lot of skill, right? So how I'll lean back into our Lead with Impact. How will you be able to, I guess, teach our emerging professionals in this cohort really the importance of your experience as well when it comes to the marketing yourself and integrating that with an executive presence, just the real importance of that and how
You know,
you see that change your life.
this is probably one of the major important changes in our current lifetime, I would say, in the way that you, let's say, achieve promotion. If it's career promotion, right? You're looking to advance in the corporate world. What do you need to do? Now, before, think about it, you're going for a new job, a new opportunity. You dust off your resume, you get your CV together, and then you begin, potentially networking and going out to some events. And that was the process, and giving out your business card. And oh, by the way, maybe somebody from an executive search firm might look you up and then offer you an opportunity, and you begin that process of getting a job. That process is still the same, but then it's also altered and changed. They are looking for you to be able to demonstrate expertise again when you're not in the room. Meaning, if you're telling me, if anybody can read the title, you're the vice president of pharmacy and imaging, just for instance, I just threw that out there. If I go to your LinkedIn profile, for instance, because that's the number one thing people are going to do when it comes to search and social, they're going to look you up. And when I see that, if all I see is it's just generic, it's just you're just the vice president of pharmacy and emergency. Okay, there's a lot of people like that. You went to such and such school. Well, okay, that levels you down to about 500,000 people. And then here's a collection of different jobs that you've had over the last 5 to 10 years, and that's it. That's not going to get it done. You've got to be able to demonstrate expertise. You've got to be able to demonstrate thought leadership. I want to know what you did in action. I want to understand the results that you achieved, and not just what you put on paper. I should be able to go to different things that you participated in. You're participating in associations. I want to understand your belief systems, because I need to know if you're going to be a good fit culturally in my environment. They may need a go-getter. They need somebody who's laid back. They may need somebody who's able to innovate or create. You don't really know, but they can get a sense of who you are and what you're about by looking at your social media these days. 10 years ago, maybe that's not the case. And then depending on your age group, you might say, well, I don't need to do that. But I guarantee you, if today, you got to ask yourself, if I lost my job today, what would that situation look like for me? Who's going to be in my corner? Who are my advocates, right? Who's going to advocate for me to get this new job? Where are my influences? Do I have influence? Do I have peers? Do I have mentors? What does that look like? And have I truly curated that experience to a point where someone's going to stand up for me? Of course, I'm going to stand up for myself. But the only way you're going to get that, what I call tribal experience, that's what we say now in the marketing world. Who is your tribe? Who actually says on your behalf and says, look, I have an opportunity. Oh, wow, Grant's available. He is. I'm going to make an opportunity for him. That's gravitas. That's executive presence. That is what you can do when you're telling your story, not just when you're trying to pull out your resume, not when it's time to pull out your CV. It's not when it's time to go look for a job or even get a promotion, but every single day you are presenting value and thought leadership in what you do.
That's fantastic. The gravitas. I love the way that sounds. And like you said, and when you master that, you're right. Roles and positions will be created for you. That's what I saw throughout my career in corporate. I was taking on roles that had not even been created yet. They curated around my expertise. And that's what you want to do. You don't want to always wait till one door open. You can very well create your own with a strong executive presence. So, with all this being said, what you said, what is your unique value proposition? And these are the workbooks that we're going to be working through with the Lead with Impact Secrets to the C-Suite. It's not just a stimulation, but you're going to take away a workbook so you can go back, process, look at some blind spots, ask yourself, okay, I am a director, okay, I am a assistant manager, but what makes me unique, right? And we really want to dive into that so you can really think on a deeper level on what makes you stand out, aka what really gives you that real gravitas, so you can articulate that and you can stand in your power in that when you go to that next C-suite. So why should we sign up for the Lead with Impact? Like, why do you think it's so important for future leaders to sign up and leaders to sign up for this event?
For me, for my question, Lead with Impact, we put this together because it's absolutely necessary in today's world. I've talked to a lot of executives, and unfortunately, they let me know the budgets right now for training, development, beginning to create leadership pipeline for individuals, to create bench, that type of thing, to make sure that we have a good cadre of individuals that we can promote. It's just not there. And then you have people that you have great talent, and then they leave because you haven't provided them a path forward. You're like, wow, And talent is huge. You know how it costs a lot of money to retrain an individual and get them ready to perform at the level that you need them to do. We are giving an excellent opportunity for individuals, no matter where you're at in your career trajectory. It could be an early careers, you're just getting out of your program in school. You are now a middle careers. I gave you the example of Denzel Ross, who's now a CEO, stuck in a middle management world. How do I make that next leap? It's not about what others will do for you, it's what you need to do for yourself. And I would challenge anybody in this call, if you don't invest in yourself, who will invest in you? That's what I have to say.
Fantastic, Grant. Well, thank you so much for giving us a sneak peek of what that segment in our summit is going to look like, of really mastering your executive presence and marketing that, right? How do we, what vehicles do we use and need to make sure we're putting ourselves out there in an intentional, meaningful way? So I will see you next week. Again, we host these lives every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we just really talk about those leadership conversations that needs to be talked about. A lot of times we're busy working and we don't really take the time out. But this is the time to really deep dive into these C-suite conversations, okay? So thank you so much for joining, everyone. Joy, everyone, thank you so much for your engagement. And we hope you tune in next week at Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we'll have another Secret to the C-Suite conversation with you and my
And don't let them forget, you go to upskilledu.com. You'll be able to sign up for the program.
Right there, we have effective, like you said, we didn't want finances to be a barrier. So we do have flexible payment plan options. And leaders, this is a great time for you to take those aspiring emerging professionals and retaining the talent, sign them up. You know, let's keep this continuous education wheel going. I love it. Thank you guys for coming today.
Thank you. Appreciate it, everybody.